We are back with episode 7 of The Step Through, a weekly show about the WNBA hosted by myself, Sabreena Merchant, and Evan Gualberto. We said last week that we were going to be on hiatus until Nneka Ogwumike was an Olympian. And lo and behold, Nneka Ogwumike appears to be an Olympian, Evan. What'd you think of that news this week?
Ooh, that's all I got. I'm just going to leave it at that. What did you think of that news?
I immediately started looking into if I could be in Las Vegas for the USA Nigeria exhibition game on July 18th. I believe you tweeted that at me as well. Turns out being in Vegas on a weekend in July, kind of expensive, but I'm going to see if I can make it happen.
Do it for the step through.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool, to be able to play with two of her sisters on an Olympic team. I feel like that's kind of like childhood dream come true. I'd feel a little bit left out. We're the fourth Ogwumike sisters, so apologies, Olivia. But, I think it'll be fun. And that's all we're looking for, right? Just more fun with WNBA basketball.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so we had a lot of fun things going on this week in the league, even though the schedule was a little bit wonky. No game on Monday. No game on Tuesday, right? And then no game on Thursday either. Weird pattern heading into the Olympic break, but we've talked about the oddities of WNBA scheduling before, and I think the answer was that neither of us really get it. So the good thing is we had plenty of fun games in the interim. One of the things that really stood out to me this week was New York Liberty, who just are incapable of playing a game that is not immediately exciting as you're watching it. And one thing that stood out to me this week while I was watching the Liberty is, my goodness, does Jazmine Jones love going and crashing the offensive glass. The New York Liberty obviously create a lot of space for players to get offensive rebounds, right? They play 5 out. They've got a lot of opportunities for guards to go in and crash. And well, I'm not sure if it's always the smartest decision. And Jazmine Jones is, she definitely sells her body out on a lot of these plays. I know one of the ones that made the rounds this week was when she flew past the Washington Mystics bench, I want to say, which I don't even know how she landed that successfully. Like, I think she flipped over them and somehow stayed in the game. And credit to you, Jazmine Jones. But I just love a point guard who flies in and extends possessions. I think it's a product of me watching so much Patrick Beverley while I cover the Clippers. But Jazmine Jones, like 3.4% offensive rebounding rate. That's top 5 in the league among guards. You might have to fact check me on that because the way the WNBA lists positions is not entirely clear on their stats page. Like, Bria Holmes was listed as a guard, and I'm here to tell you Bria Holmes is not a guard. So let's say top 5 offensive rebounding rate among guards for Jazmine Jones. A lot of it is, just her getting her own offensive rebounds when she misses a shot. But hey, those are possessions that are created again. So I like watching New York try to win the possession game some way because they're not the best rebounding team. So if this is one way they can go about it, then hey, I didn't really know what to make of Jazmine Jones. She was clearly stretched as the starting point guard last year, but I like the role that she settled into now, and that energy that she brings is just so much fun to New York.
Right. And without Natasha Howard and Beck Allen, who I believe is going to be held out until the break, which was a bigger deal when it was announced than it is when this episode will come out. But yeah, you're lacking quite a bit of length, and reckless abandon is something enjoyable to watch in guards, especially when it comes to like the glass. I remember the Wings Liberty game. The Wings are bigger, much bigger, I feel, and yet the Liberty are coming away with extra possessions somehow, some way. And like Jazz Jones had a big part to play in that.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned it. Just one thing to touch on. I think the Australian national team, all of the players are missing like the last 2 games of the regular season, or like an extra weekend or something to go prepare for the Olympics, which really sucks because there's so many fun Australian players in the league right now. Like you mentioned, Beck Allen is Australian, isn't she?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I couldn't tell from the look on your face. Obviously, our favorite Stephanie Talbot with her explosive first step, Liz Cambage, Ezzy McIntyre. Like, that's legitimate players that are going to be missing out on this weekend of WNBA basketball. So I hope it's worth a silver medal for that extra practice, Australia.
Right. And Sammy Whitcomb, she's not even on there, but she'd be great. She'd be great on there.
And you can tell Becca Allen really likes playing with Sammy Whitcomb. So, something you might want to consider next time you host an international tournament. But anyway, another thing that I really like this week, the Indiana Fever collecting their first wins since May, I want to say. They had lost 12 games in a row. It's been a struggle for the Fever. We have not really chronicled any of it because we like to talk about fun basketball, and the Fever, unfortunately, have not been participating in a lot of fun basketball. But here we go. They took a game against the Connecticut Sun this weekend, and I wanted to highlight the work of one Danielle Robinson, who just came off of a playoff series when she was okay against the Connecticut Sun defense. I mean, I can't say that I would look at any of the Las Vegas Aces offensive stats from that series and think like, oh, that person had a good series. So Danielle Robinson was good, relatively speaking, for that offensive environment. She's definitely used to playing in cramped spacing, which is something that she has to do with Indiana as well. I just love that she was able to get into the paint at will against, the Sun defense that generally does a very good job of keeping guards away from the basket. And once the guards get there, they've got good rim protection in terms of Brianna Jones, Jonquel Jones. And that just was not an impact at all against Danielle Robinson in this game. She got to the hoop repeatedly, including at the end of the game, whether it was with a screen or without. There was one play actually that was among my favorites where Tiara McCowan tips out an offensive rebound to her, and she clears it as if she's playing half court, and she has to step behind the 3-point line, and it sort of throws the defense off guard, and then she just has a straight line back to the hoop. But really enjoyed watching D-Rob in this game. She had this banked in floater over Natisha Heidemann when she rejected a screen from McCowan at the end of the game that essentially sealed the game, put the Fever up 5 with less than a minute to play. I know you and I talked about this before we recorded, that the Suns' scheduling was not exactly in their favor, right? I think you said it was their 4th game in 7 days. And you can kind of see that when D-Rob gets directly into the paint and Jonquel's like, maybe I'm not going to make a step towards you to try to contest this. So unfortunate that, the Sun were not at their best in this game, but very cool to see the Fever take advantage of it. And Danielle Robinson, former All-Star, really good player. It's a shame that she's languishing on the Fever. I think she could help quite a few playoff teams, of which Indiana is not, but really good to see her get a win.
Even when we're praising the Fever, we picked that tentatively as our game of the week over the weekend, just because, when did the Sun lose, really? And more importantly, when did the Fever win? If you watch the game, it wasn't the best basketball, but you could tell that Kelsey Mitchell, Tiffany Mitchell, they just were on a different gear, and they were just going at the Sun. And the bigs of the Sun, they asked them to come out and hedge to push the ball handlers as far out as possible, and then they tag and then they recover back to their original mark. That's a hard thing to do defensively night in and night out, especially on extremely tired legs. But the schedule is what it is, so you have to play on. I actually have a couple of plays I would like to highlight from the Fever, just because, and I'm sorry to say this, but I don't know when we'll be back talking about Indiana, so this is all me.
Well, I mean, they're going on a break, so that's why.
Right. That's probably what I meant. Anyway, so the Fever ran a bunch of floppy. That is what it is. I'm not gonna really talk about that. But 2 plays I wanted to highlight here is, I call it pitchback flare into chase. So D-Rob here swings the ball to Kelsey and gets it pitched right back. And then Kelsey flares off of Bernadette, and then chase action between Mitchell and Hattar. Chase is normally where a big passes to a guard, and then that big sets a ball screen to where they just pass the ball. And then Bernadette tries to make a pass on the roll here to the interior, but can't quite connect. And that's imaginative, interesting offense that I wish Indiana ran a little bit more. And then here, another example. So I asked a bunch of coaches this. Some call it circle. Some call it gaggle. Don't ask me why. I don't know. But so circle flare. Okay, so consecutive double stagger screens by the 2 Indiana bigs. The first one gets Vivian's the ball, and then the second one unlocks Tiffany Mitchell. And then Breland here sneaks up to set a flare screen for Victoria, who, makes it. So, stuff like that is interesting and fun. And I wish the Fever did it more, and I wish the Fever won more.
know how we've come into this like really happy project about the WNBA and just become an Indiana Fever bashing session. And I apologize to all Indiana Fever fans who happen to listen to this. I assume it's a wide percentage because of all the Notre Dame fans who watch this podcast.
Right.
You know, just the overlap between those two fan bases. But yeah, congrats to the Fever. Like the Sparks haven't won in 2.5 weeks. Fever have won more recently than them. Like, win's a win. There's a lot of good teams in WNBA. Wins do not come easy any given night. I think we're going to see that even more so like among the best teams in the league when, you know, Seattle and Vegas are missing their Australian Olympians over the next couple of games. So get a win when you can take it, especially against a full strength Connecticut team. Like, that is nothing to slouch off. And I'm glad that they did some cool things in the process. Something else that I wanted to point out, not so much from that game, but just DeWanna Bonner in general. For those of you who've been watching since the start, you know that DeWanna Bonner was my preseason pick for the scoring champ. Let's just say that pick looks off. It was wrong. You know, Dana Charles is potentially setting a record for scoring in a season, which is just incredible when you consider that like those record books are just manned by Diana Taurasi, and to eclipse Diana Taurasi and scoring in a season is like just a ridiculous feat. But anyway, what's cool about what DeWanna Bonner is doing on Connecticut is she's basically like the point guard for them right now. And like Jasmine Thomas, nominally the point guard, she guards the one for the opposing team. They don't really put the ball in her hands that much anymore. Like, it's a lot of DeWanna Bonner directing actions. And it's really hard to guard a lead ball handler who's that tall in DeWanna Bonner, you know? So like opposing teams will try to front Connecticut's big sometimes. And you can't really do that when you've got a 6'3" DeWanna who can just loft in a pass right over the defender to Jonquel, Bree Jones, whoever happens to be in the paint at the time. She's just like really capable of running pick and rolls. Saw a lot of that with Bree Jones when Jonquel was obviously at Eurobasket, makes the reads when the big slips. Like, she leads the break in transition. Like, she had this one play where Jazmine Thomas got a steal on the wing, you know, brings it down the court, gets it all the way to DB, and DB like just immediately touch passes back to Jazmine for the finish in transition. I mean, like, I didn't come into the season thinking that Bonner was going to be like assuming so many ball handling responsibilities for Connecticut. Like, I guess I should have put her higher on my assist list than I did at the start of the year instead of the scoring list. But I think it's really cool watching her do so much of this creation for Connecticut. It's clearly working very well, even though, like we said, they just lost to the Fever. But hey, DeWanna Bonner, point forward, a lot of fun to watch.
Right. And that's I can't believe we're talking this much about the Sun when they lost to the Fever. But sorry again, Indiana. The really enjoyable thing to me about Connecticut, if you're not a fan of watching defense, fine. But the interchangeability they have. Like, Jonquel at Eurobasket would just set the rebounding record, blocks, grab and go, take off, spin dribble. I can't remember what country it was. France. Blocks, leads the break, spin move, and then finishes in traffic and one. And I think her first game back or her second game back, she led the break in through this no-look dime that I don't think we talked about the last time. But Jonquel, DeWanna, and then you have reigning player of the week, Bree Jones. Like, that front court is all kinds of fun. And I even had one clip where Kayla Charles, I thought it was the pass of the game. And I'll have the clip playing for you here. It is a good pass, but it's just that game was so devoid of like fun passing. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm doing this. But it was a great pass. She threw a great pass. That front court is very talented as a passing unit.
Yeah, and like you said, just they can do everything, right? You can run point Jonquel, you can run point DeWanna, like Bree can stay in the paint or step out and, you know, be perfectly operational from the mid-range. Just a lot of variability, and all of this without Alyssa Thomas, who I miss dearly, but thankfully is ever present on the bench. I wish they would just wire her for some games. You know, I just want to know what Alyssa Thomas is talking about at all times.
You might not be able to air a bit of that, but yeah, I agree. Why are players who are on the bench and not playing rather? So
I mean, they wired Vicky Johnson for the last game, so you could clearly wire players who are not stepping onto the court. Like, there's nothing against it.
I agree. So I mean, speaking of, has anything sparked joy this week?
Well, as I mentioned, Sparks are on a bit of a losing streak. They were 6-7 and are now 6-12. So you can do the math there. They've also played a lot of really tough games in the interim, 2 against Vegas, 2 against Seattle. And I'm not really sure that they would have been expected to win any of those 4 games, even just by mathematical probabilities. I thought they looked pretty damn good against Seattle after like a 4-minute stretch of the first quarter last night when they played in Seattle. They ended up losing that game by 9 because the Storm have Breanna Stewart and the Sparks don't. Like, that's basically what happened at the end of the game. But one thing that did actually spark joy for me this week is the play of their rookie, Arella Guirantes. She obviously had a much bigger fall in the draft than some people would have expected. I know she was mocked like in the first round quite a bit and then ended up falling to number 22, which was the 3rd Sparks pick. So they actually picked 2 players ahead of her, one of whom is no longer in the league. But hey, Arella's still kicking. She's had this problem earlier in the season where she just gets very rushed on offense and she just takes super quick shots, or then somehow has the exact opposite problem where she's on the court a lot at the end of first quarters and then will have the ball in her hands and completely lose sight of the clock and just not get a shot off before the end of the period. So her situational awareness has been a bit lacking. You'd think that the Storm would not be the team where she would break out against. Like, this is a team with very solid perimeter defenders. There's a lot of responsibility for her on defense. Like, she's checking Jewel Lloyd and Sue Bird. And yet, finest game of the season, really rises to the occasion, looks more composed and mature on offense than I've ever seen, like actually making good reads in the half court. She hit, Brittany Sykes on a cut in the first half. She almost hit her career high, but was like hundredths off of, after the shot clock when she got this 3-pointer off that maybe the Sparks would have won if she hit it. I don't really care. But the point is, it's been hard to see what Guirantes brings to the team over the first half of the season. Like, Sparks fans have been clamoring to play more Carly Samuelson or even Bria Holmes over Guirantes, which is like not exactly a ringing endorsement when you are attempting to be supplanted by hardship contract players. But it's very exciting to see her like show meaningful signs of improvement. And this is very much a rebuilding season for the Sparks. Like, they don't own their first round picks, so they're still trying to win games, which is why I understand why she's not getting all of the minutes that you'd want your star rookie to get, especially because their other star rookie is out for the season with the torn ACL. But yeah, it's just cool to see like the learning curve start to happen, right? Like, I think it takes until like game 20 for guards to start to figure out like just the basic pace of the WNBA, and we're nearing that point. This was the 18th game of the season for the Sparks, and just promising to see some signs of life because there had not been many for her to this point.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. It's just she is continuing to grow in her role, which you talked about. That's really all I have. I am one of those people who was monitoring during draft night, like where she was going to go, just because I had read so many good things about her. And you watch highlights, but highlights aren't necessarily the best place to gauge what a player can do consistently. But yeah, I'm props to her for one, being able to stick around despite other draft picks going by the wayside. Two, like growing into every game, it feels like. So that's not nothing.
Yeah, I mean, when the Sparks get like 1 or 2 Ogwumikes back, they might actually start winning some games. So hey,
right.
Just need one to just break the tide. It does not get much easier though, because they close the first half of the season against Minnesota, who happens to be the subject of our game of the week.
Yeah. Oh boy. We are finally here. We've talked so much about Phee and Syl and that Notre Dame connection of Jess Shepard and Natalie Ochanwa without even mentioning Kayla McBride as another Notre Dame player. Like, we're here.
Yeah, so I mean, why don't you get started for us, Evin? What was the thing that stuck out to you most from this game?
Well, I mean, this is a very easy thing to notice, but the combo of Sylvia Fowles and Phee scored a combined 4 points in the first half. A first half in which Satu Saboli she was like halfway to a triple-double. She had 7 of the Wings' 18 points in the first quarter. She'd go on to finish the night with 12, but that's not a small deal. I believe I always get these confused, but like 5 rebounds, 6 assists, or something like that. She was point Satu and was really, really impressive. And well, we'll get this weirdness out of the way first. But so Phee actually looked to get her points from the free throw line with a minute left in the first half. And then I mean, she made those 2 free throws. And then we come back from the halftime break, and Bridget Carlton is shooting a pair of free throws, but the score doesn't change. And we are told on call that it's because it was Carlton who got fouled making the entry pass to Phee. And so she shot these 2 free throws at the beginning of the second half, but they would retroactively like fit into those Phee free throws. She makes both, so it doesn't really matter score wise, but it's so weird. It was
Super
very
weird.
Yeah. I've never seen anything like it. So and then I mean, I think I thought about you immediately on first Phee's score of the game because it came with 7:52 left in the third, inside seal, just backs in. I don't know how a guard got switched onto her that deep, but it was a quick seal, catch, bump, finish. And that third quarter was really where the tide turned because the Wings were up by 8 at halftime, and then Sylvia Fowles, Nafisa Collier. So Phee and Sil accounted for 15 of the Lynx's 22 points in the third quarter, and Dallas scored just 16. So the 2 bigs came back in a big way from Minnesota, and they almost outscored the Wings by themselves. So that was something. And then the finish was weird. I have a lot of sets to run through because we're here. I'm a huge Cheryl Reeve fan. I think I've talked about this. I talk about this every time I'm given the chance. I'm a huge fan. So to get to break down her sets is an honor and a privilege. I don't know if we want to jump in yet. So
we can talk about some other stuff first. So I just have such a hard time watching Dallas because on the one hand, I think they are maybe a top 3 most exciting team in the league. All of their games seem to be super tense, right down to the wire. They had another game against the Liberty earlier this week that was a ton of fun as well. And yet, I just have no idea if they're optimizing what they're capable of doing. You know, like their lineups and rotations seem to change like at a whim. You know, Charlie Collier starts this game. You're thinking, oh yeah, I like that 6'5" size against Sylvia Fowles. Like give Charlie a chance to see what she's made of. And then she's not starting the second half. Like Bella Alarie is taking that role. And then by the end of the game, Isabel Harrison is basically playing center. And like, yeah, it's great. You want to, showcase all of your options. It's just, there doesn't really seem to be a rhyme or reason to how these decisions are being made. Like, and we talked about this before we started recording, but like, who is Dallas's point guard? Like Mariah Jefferson starts. Ty Harris is a point guard and comes off of the bench and theoretically assumes the role of backup 1. And yet at the end of games, like the ball is in Marina Mabry's hands, who is not technically a point guard, but they just want to have her on the court next to Enrique and Allisha Gray. And who else is going to handle the ball then? Because you want to have Enrique, getting into her spots as opposed to having to create everything for herself. Not that she is incapable of creating things for herself. Like, my goodness, some of the blow-bys Enrique had in this game were just ridiculous. But I don't know what Dallas is doing on any given day, is what I'm trying to say. And it also seems like they, because of that fluidity of their rotations, like they can't run the same level of scripted sets that other teams do because just like everything is so in flux all of the time, right? Like I never, claim to be a master of like what plays teams are running or anything like that, but like I could watch the Wings and tell you that like it's not a lot. Like not a ton going on here with the Wings. And it allows, obviously for these individual talents like Enrique Gumbawale and Satu Sabali and Allisha Gray, who I thought was excellent, especially in the first half of this game, to really shine just by taking advantage of this chaos and like finding the gaps. And, they're supremely athletic and they can get to the rim basically whenever they want. And like I think Allisha Gray's been awesome ever since she returned from 3-on-3. It's kind of a shame she's not going to be on the All-Star game, actually. Like, I feel bad for those 3-on-3 Olympians that are not, like, All-Star Olympians and also not All-Stars, but, discussion for another day. But yeah, like, there's so much individual talent on this team, and I find myself wanting them to figure out a way to work it all together. And we're just not there yet. And that's okay. Like, it's a newish team. It's a new head coach. I mean, I feel like every team in the WNBA at a certain point is a newish team and they don't have time to work during the offseason, because what is an offseason, right? So like, I understand how it's hard to develop this kind of continuity, but I'm wanting more when I watch them. And the fact that they're already this good, like they're like 9-11 at this point. And they've been in like way more games than that. Like we talked about their game against Seattle where they lost on a buzzer beater, and all of these other games that have been just right down to the wire like this one. They're just like so close to getting over the hump. And I feel like a lot of it is just low hanging fruit on their end, like stupid technical fouls or like, just not quite being on the same page defensively. Like there's like a better team in here and I want to see it. And it's just a little frustrating to watch.
Yeah, so I mean, growing pains, I think, it's an oversimplification, obviously, because a team with this many draft picks, as we I think have talked about in the past, once you get the rotations right, which I think I'm trying to figure out like who is doing what, because I understand closing with Marina as the ball handler, because no disrespect to Jefferson and Harris or anything, but like the most potent you can get, I believe, is with the backcourt of Marike. So Marina and Marike together give you enough ball handling, and it's not like perfect playmaking, but it's enough there. And whoever's hot and rolling between the bigs is just going to get it done. Allisha Gray, like more often than not, will carve out a role there. Satu was in foul trouble for, I guess, the key stretch. So she had been having a great game, as I said at the top. But so those two also, it's nice that they're lefties. So that's always fun to watch. And then you throw another big in there, Izzy Harrison. That's dynamic and it's fun. But you can't have your closing lineup be the lineup you play. Well, you can have it be the lineup you play the most, but in terms of like figuring out everybody's role, you can't have that be your go-to lineup. It's, I think, a break in case of emergency or when the games are close. This is the lineup that's going to win you games. But it's just like, who is the point guard? When Marina is out there on the floor, she is always handling the ball. Like there are other capable players. Why do you have Charlie start games and then not come in the second half and basically play spot minutes? It's confusing stuff. I get matching up by matchup, but that is a hard thing to ask of your players, like night in and night out, is, okay, we're going to shift, because like players want a sense of comfort and familiarity. And like when you know that you're going to come in at this point and you're going to be with this group, that's when you start to get your flow. And that's what it feels like. The Wings are in just about every game, or at least all the games that I've watched, and they have like a great closer in Enrique, but it just feels so clunky getting there.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this a lot with Vegas, where like it seems like they don't start their best players, and that is somewhat excusable because of just the abundance of talent they have on that team, right? Like you watch this first quarter of the Dallas game and they bring in 5 bench players and immediately turn the tide of the game. And it's like, they're doing this against a lot of Minnesota starters. They're not doing this against another bench lineup. So when you have that good of a bench bomb, it just makes me think, are you starting your best players? And like, we had mentioned this, I think a little bit earlier on our show, maybe like week 3 or something, where like, yeah, Marina can handle the ball, but there's so many ways that you can use a shooter of her capability off the ball that Dallas just doesn't do. And like when you have Ty Harris who can play point, like why not run Marina off some screens? Why not get her involved in like some second side actions that like she just can't do if she's constantly running the offense? And then like, what is Ty Harris doing if not being the point guard in those situations? So, and then how is Allisha Gray not starting? Like, I don't understand. She's so talented. She had this one move near the end of the second quarter, or like midway through the second quarter, where she basically did like a Dirk Nowitzki, like one-legged fadeaway in the paint. And it's just like when you have someone of that talent who I think is naturally like a 3, I don't think Satu is naturally a 3. I think of her more as a 4 or 5. Why isn't she starting on the wing for you? I just have a lot of questions about what's going on there, and it dims my enthusiasm for what is otherwise a very fun team to watch. Like I said, like when Allisha Gray's pulling out things like this, like regularly getting pick sixes and just running out in transition and scoring. Like she took it to Phee a couple of times. Like there was a stretch where, Phee was just basically setting up shop in the post, and Gray does a really good job of fronting her and deflecting the pass and then just going at her immediately on the ensuing possession, like driving right at her and earning 2 free throws. And not everybody is capable of attacking Nafisa Collier in isolation like that. It's just not something that gets done very often unless your name is like Breanna Stewart. So I just think I just want more Allisha Gray. I understand she was on 3-on-3. Like it's hard to get her in the starting lineup before that. I hope that that's no longer the case after the Olympic break, because I don't look at this Dallas lineup and see 5 players who are better than her or fit that is better than her with 5 players. So thus ends my Allisha Gray rant. I apologize. But yeah, get her on the court more.
I agree. The fit thing that's a great point. Is that it's not necessarily even that like, it's if you want to talk about like a talent thing or like, because that's normally what it is to me. Like when I talk to other coaches about, oh, why isn't this player starting? Is because like you want them coming in and like feasting on the bench units or whatever. Is because they don't like fit exactly with your starting lineup. But like if your starting lineup is flexible, then why not start Allisha Gray? Like to me, Allisha, Arike, if you want to bring Marina off the bench, fine, I understand that. But Allisha, Arike, Satu, like those 3 can play together, and those 3 can play together with just about anybody else on the court. So if just figure out a way for that triumvirate to be together as often as possible.
Yeah. Just want to send a little bit of love to Bella Alarie, who, my goodness, I have no idea whatever is happening with her on offense, but I love watching her play defense. Like just really good at standing tall, being vertical in the paint. She and Mabry actually had like a nice double on fouls early in the second quarter where Mabry ended up with the strip, but that's only possible because, Alarie is blocking her path to the basket. You don't see like second year centers who are this comfortable already, like playing defense against the very best in the league, like Sylvia Fowles. Usually I would think like the defense would take longer to learn, but she's already getting it done. I really like watching her play. I understand why you'd want to play her ahead of Collier. Like it's not like she's old by any means anyway, right? Like she was the 5th pick in the draft 1 year ago. So you are definitely investing in your young players. Again, just a lot going on in Dallas. I don't really know where she fits. Like clearly they like to be a little bit more offensively versatile at the end of games. So that's why she's not closing. But just, some love for Alarie. I thought she had some nice minutes in this game again. And it's just like it's a trend whenever I watch her play. Like, I wish she just could score at all. Like clearly that's keeping her off the court. But as long as she's figured out one end so far, I think that makes her playable if necessary.
Right. And I mean, to your point, the young bigs in any professional league, that's like if you're trying to decide between like guards or wings or bigs by far the steepest learning curve and defensively. And for her to already be this far along can only mean good things, because a serviceable defensive big goes a long way. Because if your shot's not falling and you're hemorrhaging points defensively, then like you're going to be played off the floor. But defensively, Bella feels very much like a player who, if Dallas doesn't figure it out when she goes elsewhere, is going to be a great fit there as the first big off the bench. Just that's what it feels to me.
Yeah, I just hope that they figure it out before she gets to that point. Yeah. But we should probably talk about the team that actually won this game just a little bit. And I want to start with the one Notre Dame player who we haven't brought up on this podcast till episode 7, Kayla McBride, other than when I was dumping on her because apparently the Aces didn't miss her. Hey, it was a rough start to her Minnesota career. There is no denying that. She basically just like came off of the plane from Europe and stepped into opening night, and turns out that's kind of hard to do when you don't get any training camp and you're starting on a new team. And I completely understand why it would take some growing pains, especially because Minnesota really didn't have like a coherent lineup for the first part of the season, right? Like Powers was in and out, and they were waiting on Phee and health and safety protocols, and it just was not a good look for any of them, and especially not for Kayla. I mean, she was shooting like 37% from the field, not really having an impact on defense. And in this recent 5-game winning streak, like, this is exactly the player who you expected to get when you signed Kayla McBride this offseason. She's, over the past 5 games, I mean, she's the best free throw shooter in the league, which is just a wonderful luxury to have. She's shooting 48% on 3-pointers, 56% overall from the field. She's not really turning the ball over at all. She's playing a ton of minutes. What was it? She's playing 36 minutes per game. So just a reminder, there are 40. So that's a lot of Kayla McBride that you're getting. She played 37 last night in this game against Dallas. When she was off the court in those 3 minutes, Minnesota was outscored by 8 points. So big difference for Kayla McBride. And she's not just a shooter, right? She's a scorer. She can leverage the threat of her scoring, to get into the paint. She's not really like an all the way to the basket kind of scorer, but she makes good decisions, around the elbows. Because she's such a good shooter, she can be a good post-entry passer to Fowles or Dantas or whoever happens to be manning the lane at that point. Minnesota actually does run stuff for her off the ball. There are a number of times where she's coming off of a screen or curling to the basket, and she's just a really good off-ball mover, helps set her shots going into. And then defensively, a couple plays where she's just hounding Arella Guirantes. There was this one set where the wings were coming out of a timeout. McBride is guarding Guirantes and just smothers her, and Dallas can't even get a shot off. They commit a shot clock violation right after a timeout, which the most infuriating thing to watch if you're a fan. But yeah, that's just, McBride making it really difficult for Arella to get anywhere. That's the kind of defense that we saw occasionally from her in Vegas, and I think is really important to being the best version of herself in Minnesota. So as a self-proclaimed Kayla McBride fan, love her game personally. I always thought that Vegas fans were not nice enough to her. Very gratifying to watch her be this best version of herself right now.
Yep. I mean, it's not surprising that we're showing Notre Dame players love. That's just it. I can talk more about the sets and stuff, but that's what impressed me the most is if you're not familiar with Kayla McBride, she just goes. Her work rate is crazy. And it's not as if she is your lead ball handler and it's just a bunch of pick and rolls and stuff. It's constant nonstop off ball activity, and defensively she's guarding whoever it is you're asking her to guard. And that's a huge deal to me. If you just watch the way she curls off, she's getting bumped all the time. And defensively, she's giving she is bumping a lot herself. And that's exhausting. That's exhausting. And I did not realize that she was playing practically the whole game. That boggles my mind.
Speaking of playing practically the whole game, Napheesa Collier played 40 minutes last night. So Minnesota is very much in these games matter mode. So love to see it from Cheryl Reeve. We talked about this a couple weeks back when she was saying that she had set a self-proclaimed minutes limit on Sylvia Fowles and then just blew past it within the first couple of games of the season because, hey, got to get your good players on the floor. And when Fee's not in foul trouble, she is capable of playing a lot. Very, very impressive because, I mean, it's no surprise to anyone who's watching how much we are just obsessed with Napheesa Collier's game. Title of the show is an homage to basically her and A'ja Wilson, the more and more I think about it. But I just love all of the work that Napheesa does off of the ball, right? You don't have to put the ball in her hands to make things happen. She just is constantly working before she gets the ball, to spring her teammates. I mean, you mentioned this earlier. Her first basket of the game comes on that seal when poor little Mariah Jefferson gets switched onto her and Collier just muscles her out, gets the ball, easy 2 points. She does that again, 3 minutes later, she's just posting up. There's just no defense for her when she's that close to the basket. Great cutter. Sylvia, 2 minutes left in the third quarter, Sylvia Fowles is on the high post. Napheesa just gets into the lane. Fowles finds her, another easy 2 points. Does the same thing with Allisha Clarendon to start the fourth quarter, just flashes into the paint. She just moves better off the ball than Dallas knows how to keep up with her. And more and more of that throughout the game. One of my favorite plays of the game actually is Collier sets a screen for Clarendon basically at half court. It lets Clarendon get a free lane all the way to the basket. They end up with an and one. And then there was that one play where Phee gets a lot of contact on Enrique on a screen where Clarendon's coming off, and that's the one where Ogwumike ends up getting a technical foul. But just the level of force on that screen, I'm not sure if it was a foul, honestly. Like, it could have been an offensive foul on Collier. I'm not sure, but I just love a player who works that much when they don't have the ball in her hands, because it makes it so much easier for all of her teammates when she is doing everything off the ball. Like, she's a superstar, right? Like, she's arguably the best player on this team. Maybe there's, Sylvia Fowles based on her play this year. I just think that what Collier does is a lot more versatile. Like, she just fills in the gaps everywhere. And again, like, playing 40 minutes a night, literally doing everything, and to do all that without the glory of scoring. Like, she only had 10 points, and it's been like a bit of a shooting struggle for her, to start the season. I imagine that's going to turn around a bit. Just, I love watching like all of the things that happen when, the defense is focused somewhere else. Collier's just finding the gaps and making them pay.
Yeah. And so, I mean, if you just looked at like the raw numbers, it's 4 rebounds, an assist, according to like the WNBA app, and 10 points on 5 of 11 shooting. That's nothing, really. I mean, it's not nothing, but
it's an Olympian.
Yeah. But she's it's it's important to say this, one, as a basketball coach, and two, as a person who like is trying to like break down games, is watch the games. Her impact is more than just the box score. As you're saying, she fills in so many gaps. There's nothing she doesn't do well. And the way she times helping and rotating, and the way she sets screens, it uncorks so many things for her teammates. And, screen assists, whatever, like, sure, you can measure that in advanced stats, but legitimately, the way she boxes out, the way she lays out, and the way she just works nonstop, it's really impressive, actually, to, Sylvia Fowles at her, like, advanced age. I backed myself into a corner there. Syl, Kayla, Phee, like, they are just working nonstop. And, there's no other time that I'm going to be able to say this, but like, Sylvia Fowles currently leads the league in steals. That's again blows my mind.
Yeah, they had a stat on the broadcast last night of like the tallest player in the WNBA to ever lead the league in steals, and it was like Sancho Little has done it 3 times. For reference, Sylvia Fowles is 6'6", right?
Yes.
I think we looked it up last week. Yeah. Sancho Little is 6'4". So, by a margin, I would think Sylvia Fowles would, be taking that record. But I'm glad you brought up Fee's defense, because there was a play that like was just super impressive to me in the fourth quarter when Mabry and Sabali were doing a give and go at the top of the key, and Collier just like stuffs it out at the rim. Like, no stat there, right? Because the ball goes off of her. Dallas regains possession, but like that should have been an easy 2 points at the cup for Marina, and Collier just immediately sniffed it out and was having none of it.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, another play, I actually think she had 4 blocks this game, I believe, right? Or she's credited with 4 blocks.
Yeah.
But well, I'll get into it later when I break down the clips. But she blocks a jumper, which to me is always super impressive. Like, a blocked 3-pointer it's cool. It's always very cool. But to block a jumper, especially when it's like a single coverage situation, you're basically playing one-on-one, and you're able to rise up when the player you're guarding rises up for a pull-up is, yeah, I have it in my notes as like, wow, which is, it's not the most articulate thing, but yeah.
We talked a lot about Stewie last week, and, just all of the amazing things that she's able to do. And like, this became pretty clear to me in the playoffs last year when the Storm were playing the Lynx in the semifinals, that Collier is just like a light version of Stewie. But like, in a world where Brianna Stewart didn't exist, we would be talking so much about her. But because she's just like not quite there, I feel like she falls under the radar a little bit.
I completely agree. It's just, I believe she was I'm sure this is documented extensively elsewhere, but like, she was an underclassman when Stewie was at UConn, right?
Yeah. She was a freshman when Stewie was a senior.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, she was a part of that. She was the last one of that, like the 4 straight championships.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, in a world where Stewie doesn't exist, like, Phee would be looked at as like one of the 4, 5 best forwards in the league based on like what she is asked to do every possession. Yep. So unless you have anything else, like I can get. Oh, sorry. Just wanted to mention this. A super weird game with the free throws and the tech, but somewhere along the way, Allisha and who was it? Marina Mabrey, I believe. Yeah, they got double technicals. What a weird game.
It was such a funny play because Dallas is clearly dribbling the ball into the corner to like call timeout. For some reason, it takes a couple seconds for Vicki Johnson to actually call timeout. And so in that time, Laysha Clarington is just like pressuring up on Marina. And Marina doesn't like it at all because one, she's Marina Mabrey, and two, like they're about to call timeout. What are you doing? And then just like a little chest bump on the way to the bench, which I thought was so funny. And then you come back from a commercial and found out that they were double text, and it's just like, I don't know that we needed technicals there. Like just let it go.
Yeah, I mean it certainly set the stage for later in the game. But I mean, if we're talking the refereeing, just a quick aside, it was just Arike has, I think, the second best ongoing feud with officials, second only to, of course,
to Diana, of course, yeah.
Like, but just like the number of times like she goes into traffic and like gets hit, and she does get hit. I mean, a lot of times it's, you know, they get the ball first, and I'm not here to legislate like what is and what isn't a foul, but the reactions after make for great viewing. It's a lot of Arike WTFing the refs. It's a lot of Arike staring down the refs. It's I mean, eventually you get a tech if you say the wrong things to the referee, but you know, that's always a fun subplot to the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't we just get into the sets? Because as we talked about beforehand, the end of the game, Dallas kind of just imploded. So
yeah, it was really, it was disappointing because it felt like the tech, I mean, that's a 50-50 call, I feel. Or maybe it's, well, no, sorry. It's definitely a call. I don't know which way you're going to call it because like I watched the replay a few times and I still don't know. But Arike is justifiably upset with the way it was called, and she says something to the ref and gets a tech, and it just doesn't feel like Dallas recovers from that. So I believe Arike even goes out, which, you know, I understand as a coach, but okay. Yeah. So right before we get into this, let me just say, if you like hearing the opposing coach's voice, watch a Wings game so you can hear what they sound like, because I watched the Liberty game and I now know how Walt Hopkins says horns every kind of way because they ran it a lot. And I know how Cheryl Reeve says horns because they ran it a bunch. So it's just important for my notes to say that. Okay, so Minnesota sideline out of bounds here. A zipper for Allisha, which they then curl away from. And then a rip screen or a back screen by Kayla on Sylvia Fowles, which flows into a dribble handoff. And then because of Kayla's gravity as a shooter, Syl is able to get deep post position, entry pass, score. I mean, that's just, there's not a whole lot you can do with that. Just a quick aside, like a message to the coaches is like that zipper cut is a very common action, but to curl away from it, super unique, and it blew my mind. So Cheryl Reeve, if you're watching this, thank you for everything you do for coaches everywhere. Minnesota again. Elbow pin Veer is what I ended up like calling this. So the ball is entered to Syl at the elbow, and then Allisha sets a screen for Kayla coming out of the corner to curl, and then they turn right around and get the handoff from Sylvia Fowles. And then Syl sets a Veer screen for Kayla to pop out, which again gets her deep post position to score. And it's funny that I'm now realizing I highlighted all 4 points Syl had in the first half. Okay. Some Dallas this time.
It's horns.
Yep, it's horns. It's horns. This was not intentional. It's horns. The Wings run horns, and the Wings are actually. It looks like they're going to run horns flex, where Mariah she enters the ball into the elbow and then gets in position to set a flex screen for Arike, but Arike rejects it and then goes straight for the handoff. So it's a shortcutting it, I think. Eventually, Kayla gets the ball and looks to attack, but then gets blocked by Phee when she pulls up at the elbow, which this was the play I was talking about. It's a difficult play, I think. And I mean, thought I'd throw something in there just for fun, a non-horns play from Dallas. I don't really know how to label this one because on the one hand, Marina looks like she's going to cut baseline and then up the lane line, which would be textbook zipper, but instead she shortcuts it by going diagonal to receive the ball. And then Ty Harris cuts through, and then Izzy sets a ram for Bella, who, sets the ball screen, and then Marina gets a pull-up to go. That's just tough action to guard. Minnesota again, sideline out of bounds. Zipper for Crystal Dangerfield, and then slice action for Phee, which is that sort of diagonal, and then screen the screener for Kayla. And this is what we were talking about earlier. She curls tight on the elbow jumper and gets an and one. The versatility to be able to do that is, not a lot of shooters can, or not a lot of shooters actually work on doing that anymore. So, oh my God.
Also nice to see Crystal Dangerfield. It's been a while.
Yes. Oh boy. Surprise, surprise. Horns for Dallas. Marina passes the ball to Satu, and then gets a flare screen from Bella, and then her and Bella set a double stagger for Arike to come out of the corner. And then what it actually turns into is 3 straight screens because Satu hands the ball off, and Arike coming off of 3 screens, full head of steam, unstoppable. So
it's like a Stephanie Talbot level of explosive first step right there.
Oh man.
I have it in my notes literally written as Talbot-like first step. If any of you were watching the Storm Sparks game last night, there was a defensive breakdown on LA that legitimately made it look like Stephanie Talbot has the fastest first step in the WNBA. And maybe she's just more athletic than we were giving her credit for, but
I think she just might be one of those players that just has the burst, but will only use it once in a game just to let us know she has it, but she doesn't like going to it.
For choice situations.
Yes. Okay, so similar alignment to horns, but actually a different set. So Arike Iverson's across while Allisha cuts through, and then Arike cuts right off of Kayla, and then gets the ball at the basket for a bucket. So Iverson loop for Arike, which gotta love switching it up. I would really enjoy that from the Wings. Actually, is everyone's expecting horns. Just build out a couple of sets where it looks like you're in horns, but you're not really gonna run horns. That's the next level right there. So Minnesota's turn to run horns flex this time. Kayla gets the ball to Phee, then sprints down the middle to set a flex screen for Carlton. And then Danta screens the screener here, and Kayla makes a great hook pass to get Demiris the ball deep. Nothing really comes of it because of the spacing is mucked up. But then the ball swings around, and then Phee gets a decent look from the corner, but just misses. And that's actually something I wanted to touch on. I know you talked about Bella defensively, but the Wings really did a great job in the first half and you talked about this with Marina too, but they just swarmed the post players, and that led to a number of in the post kick out threes. And the difference in the game largely is that the Wings didn't convert and the Lynx did. So I say that because the next play is an all-time favorite. It's an elevator play. And I really hate that the beginning of this play gets cut off by the broadcast, but an elevator play for Kayla. You can just watch it come on, But the cool thing here is really heady by Izzy Harrison to back up to give Marina room to get through. But not to throw her under the bus, but I think Marina took a less than optimal angle, so she gets there late. And then, I mean, the final set I wanted to highlight is surprise, surprise, horns from Dallas. But so I don't know what's happening here. You'll see this a lot if you watch Wings games, or maybe they'll fix it going forward. But like, there's a lot of communication as to like who should start at which elbow. I don't really understand like what the difference is here. But so Charlie looks like she's telling Izzy to flash up, and I mean she does. And then she gets the ball, and they run Chicago for Marina, and then Marina is able to like turn the corner, and like I think this is her only assist of the night, but absolutely threads the needle here. An outstanding pass. You know. But yeah, horns, Dallas. If you've learned nothing else from this episode of the Step Through, Dallas and horns. Like this.
Like this. That should be like their city jerseys, just like horns instead of wings. They are in the market for a third set of jerseys, right? They no longer have the third one.
Yes, they should like channel Texas, just the
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah. This was a very Marina game where her spunk was very much on display. There was that one play in the first half where she was just like yelling at the ref for a 4-point play after she nailed the three. She obviously got into Leja a couple times, and then also I think a good understanding of why maybe she shouldn't be your point guard in like clutch situations, but we'll figure out what Dallas wants to do going forward there, because I don't know.
Yeah,
I think it's very clear.
There was that one play where it's like it was quite strange where she gets a screen and roll, she gets a screen, and then I can't remember who the big was, but the big just kind of stands in place.
Yeah,
and so
Marina's just like stuck, right?
Yeah, so Marina just keeps going, which credit to her, like keeps the play alive, and she just roams the baseline, does that probe dribble, the Nash dribble, I've heard people call it, but like, comes around, and Sylvia Fowles is not an easy player to get around. So she's able to probe and get to a spot she's comfortable with, and she pulls up. But like the strange thing about that play is that the big is just kind of like at the elbow and then like sinks in just a little bit in case she wants to drop it off. But like, that's not really it's a screen and stand.
Yeah. I mean, like we said at the top, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit here for the Wings to clean up. Like, just so much talent on this roster. Like, every time I watch Satu, I keep thinking like, okay, yeah, I get it. I get why they voted her an all-star. Just she was doing some pick and popping at the start of the game that was just so effortless. Baseline drives, like she's got that. Isabel Harrison's got just tremendous footwork in the post. Kayla Thornton, just a freaking bulldog. Like, her rebounding is so important to this team. Allisha Gray, we mentioned it a number of times. Mabry, like Harris, just abundance of options here. Just no idea what's going on collectively.
Yeah, I think I said this once upon a time when we were talking about them. Is like, these are good problems to have.
Yeah.
Just an abundance of talent, but it's still a problem, and you have to fix it. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Whereas, Minnesota, like, they're starting to figure it out, right? They've really coalesced on a rotation. Interesting to see what kind of minutes Arella Powers gets when she comes back. Hopefully, like, Collier just won't have to play 40 minutes a game, and McBride won't have to play 36, 37. But like, this was the theory that made me so high on Minnesota to start the season. Like, it doesn't have to be that difficult, right? You just have like 4 spacers, Fowles in the middle, impossible to guard because of all of the capabilities that these players have on and off the ball. And then when you throw in all the beautiful stuff that Cheryl Reeve likes to run, like, it's everything fits together so perfectly on Minnesota, especially now that Leja has filled into this point guard role so seamlessly. And I'm just excited to keep watching them play. Like, I think they still have a lot of games left against the big 3, and maybe they're going to try to make that a big 4 in the second half of the season. There's still a few losses back, but this is what I was hoping for from the Lynx, and it's good to see.
Yeah, I mean, no step through yet from Phee, but I talked about it, so I hyped it up on Twitter. The MVP, the same night, got a step through, and I'll have that clip for you here. Sorry, M, that I'm not good enough to like make this a fancy intro, but here it is.
Yeah.
And then I mean that takes us right into what you're looking forward to this upcoming week.
I'm really excited for the All-Star game. You know, we've talked a lot about who deserved to be an All-Star, who didn't, blah, blah, blah. I just think the format is going to allow for some real competition because the US team is trying to prepare for the Olympics. And there are Olympians on the All-Star team who are also trying to prepare. And then just a bunch of players like Enrique, who thought they probably should have been on the Olympic team and are eager to show why that's the case. So really looking forward to that. Now that I think about it, like Liz was voted an All-Star, right? But isn't Australia having their training camp?
Ooh, that's interesting.
So wouldn't someone have to replace her? I mean, either way, I think you just start Candace and Jonquel at the 4 and 5, and then bring somebody else off the bench. But yeah, just I love all of the beef possibilities here, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I mean, we never do this, but if we can close out with an Evin Asks, do you think that if maybe Nneka is the replacement, that she could play 2 games against the Olympic team, the U.S. Olympic team?
That'd be perfect. Like she's already going to be in Vegas because she's the president of the Players Association. Obviously, she's going to be at All-Star. Potentially there for Team Nigeria. It seems like a very natural replacement, just easiest for everyone to accomplish. Why not?
Right. And I mean, the thing that I'm looking forward to in the coming weeks, obviously the All-Star game, is, you know, we're still waiting on the Sylvia Fowles nickname. One day it will come. Again, not trying to rush you, but when it does come, it's going to be no pressure. It's going to be dynamite. All right. Also, just wanted to quickly address the thing that happened last week was not an accident, by the way. I've gotten 2 DMs about like, hey, did it cut off? No, it did not. If you know, you know. And clearly the 2 people who asked me don't. So sorry. And with that, we'll see you.
Take care.